All right, everybody, welcome back here to lesson two. Brian Reese here, the VA Claims Insider. Again, this is lesson two of VA Claims Insider Mastery, where I'm talking about the three pillars of a winning VA disability claim. So remember, gang, we're in the strategy portion here. So when we talk about module one, this is all about your personalized strategy and the things that you need to have right. And that way, if you get the strategy right, the tactics, which I cover in detail with, literally on-screen instruction, going through e-benefits, all of that, that portion becomes easy. Okay, but you have to get the strategy right. And this one is absolutely crucial because the three pillars, I use the term pillar because that's a legal term. It's a legal term that the VA uses. And the pillars, it's actually what they're looking for. So when they're evaluating your claim and they're looking at the evidence, their raters and the folks who help with their intake side, they actually have a process that they're following, and they're looking for these three things. All right, the three pillars of your winning VA disability claim. Okay, so let's we'll get going through this here, and we'll take along, and hopefully you get a ton out of this. Okay, all right. So again, I wanted to cover this because these pillars tie directly to these three things. I know we talked about them a little bit in lesson one, but I want to cover them again because they're that crucial. Okay, so are you even eligible under the law? The first thing is you have to have a medical diagnosis of a condition or a disability by a doctor. Okay, now what I mean by that is this is a medical evidence piece. So somewhere, whether it's in your VA medical records, your military medical records, or any private treatment records, there needs to be something that shows a diagnosis of a condition. Now, depending on when you left the military, your military records, you might actually have a really nice, almost like a cover sheet. It's an index where it breaks out conditions that you've had or disabilities that you've had that potentially you've told doctors about or that's been ongoing. So it's been documented ongoing throughout your military career, whether you did 2 years or you did 35 years. Okay. But regardless, if you're still active duty, by the way, get your butt to the doctor now and go tell them everything going on with you. Nothing's too small. Foot problems, heel problems, stomach issues, IBS, right shoulder pain, tell them everything. If you've already left the military, you can still be getting this stuff documented at the VA or any private doctors that you have. Okay, so just because something's not in your military medical record does not mean that it won't be eligible for compensation. The key, though, is getting the diagnosis and getting it in some type of a medical record. Okay, so I'm going to yell at the veterans here as well, myself included. If you haven't been going to the VA, you need to go. All right, no matter how small the issue is, you need to go, and you need to be telling them what's going on with you. So whether it's at your annual physical, if you're having mental health issues and you've never gone in, pick up the phone, call the mental health facility near you, and start documenting the process. It's absolutely crucial, guys. Okay? All right, so number one, medical diagnosis of a condition or a disability by a doctor. Number two, this is a big one for a lot of folks. And so, again, if you've ever looked inside your e-benefits profile and you see something that says not service connected, this is the reason. Okay, so pillar two is the disability has to have been caused or made worse by your active duty military service. All right, the nexus. It's just a legal term, meaning there's a logical connection between something that occurred in service and where you sit today. Okay, so really be thinking about this of were there specific incidents or things that happened that can tie this nexus back. Okay, and I'm going to get into in a minute how we overcome some of these things if it's not clear. What I've discovered, though, is a lot of veterans, they think that, okay, well, I have sleep apnea and because I have a CPAP machine, I'm going to file a claim and it's going to get service connected and I'll start getting compensation. Well, a lot of these individuals have been out of the military now for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So the nexus piece becomes more difficult. The longer you've been out of service, the harder it is to prove the nexus. Okay. Now, there are obviously ways to overcome that. I'm going to help you guys do that in this course with personal statements, with buddy letters, which buddy letters are what are called lay evidence. All that means is after the fact medical evidence. So I'm going to help you with that. And then you're also going to get access to our doctors at discounted rates to get medical nexus opinions written and DBQs. Now, I talk a little bit more about the medical nexus piece here as we tick along throughout this presentation. Okay, so that's the nexus. Was caused or made worse by your active duty service, and there's a clear and logical connection to the disability you're suffering from today and some specific incident or incidents in your military service. All right, and then the third part, persistent and reoccurring symptoms of the disability into the present day. This means severity of symptoms, okay? So this is another reason why it's so crucial for you to be going to the doctor, because every time you go see a doctor, whether you realize it or not, they're documenting your medical record electronically. So every time, I'll just give you my personal example. Every time I go in to see my doctor for my GERD, right, gastro reflux disease, I get a bad heartburn. So I take omeprazole, which is it's an over-the-counter, it's like the Prilosec now, but it's not the OTC, it's actually the prescription strength. So my primary care manager prescribes those to me for my GERD, and every time I go see him, I tell him how severe my symptoms are of my GERD, how it's affecting my life, how it affects my sleep, things that I can no longer eat because of it, this medication I have to take, the side effects tied to that, okay? But I know that every time I go see him, he's documenting those notes of my medical history, which again means severity of symptoms. And so by documenting those things every single time you go in, if and when you need to file a claim, or you're going to file for an increase, or you're going to try to get something service connected that was previously denied, this type of evidence is going to be crucial, because severity of symptoms, how bad your disability is crucial into determining life impacts, okay? So think about this as you're hearing my voice right now. How are disabilities that you currently have, how are they affecting or limiting your life? An example might be a shoulder problem that you have. Hey, because of my shoulder problems, because of my AC joint separation that I've had, I'm in such pain that I can no longer lift more than 20 pounds over my head. I can't lift weights anymore. I can't pick up my children or my grandchildren anymore. It hurts all the time. I'm in constant chronic pain. So think about those things, because the severity of symptoms, guys, is what ties to a rating under the law, okay? And the rating under the law, of course, it means actually a percentage, which then ties to compensation and benefits, all right? And I'm going to show you here in Module 2 under the tactics how we keyword so that these things can become more clear, and you can help steer the VA rater into the direction that you want them to go, okay? Okay, so I'm going to deep dive this a little bit more. Sorry, I know these are bits of word charts, but I wanted to keep some of this content in here because it's that important. That requirement 1 explained the disability currently affects you. Many people are denied benefits because they incorrectly believe you're entitled to compensation just for being injured in the service. This is not true, all right? So for VA disability compensation claims, you must be suffering from a medically diagnosed condition that's currently affecting you. All right. This means that if you've had injuries or surgeries and you've determined that you're better, you're not necessarily going to get benefits from it if you no longer have persistent and reoccurring symptoms or that clear diagnosis. Okay. So an example here would be the shoulder. Uh, let's say I had well, this is true, so I'll use this as my example. I've had an AC joint separation. I had a completely torn posterior labrum in my left shoulder, and it was affecting me a ton. And so eventually the orthopedic surgeon said, "Hey, Brian, we're going to have to do surgery on this." I didn't want to do surgery, but I knew that we had to, and we did. And in theory, that surgery should have fixed me. He healed. He put anchors in there. I've got 6 anchors now in my shoulder. Sewed all that up, fixed the AC joint. If he or somewhere in my medical record it explains that I'm okay now, that I'm no longer injured, I'm not going to be eligible for compensation under the law. Now, obviously, we know that just because you had surgery on something doesn't mean it's better. In fact, sometimes it's worse. So, just be thinking about that, though, that just because you had a disability happen on active duty doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be eligible for compensation. This is why, gang, medical evidence is so crucial. All right. You've got to get your butts to the doctors and you've got to be documenting this stuff. Okay. Okay. So again, this is the nexus piece explained. The disability was caused or made worse by your military service. It should say by your active duty military service. All right. So you need to show that there was an event, disease, injury, something that caused the disability. Now, they're going to go through all of the medical records that they can find to see if there were any issues of did the condition exist prior to your time in the service. If that's the case and they can't prove service connection or that the military aggravated it, it's very likely that you could get denied. Okay. So I wanted to show this though here because a lot of veterans don't have their military medical records for whatever reason. Whether maybe you didn't get them when you left the service in 1980 or 1990, maybe you can't find them, you lost them, whatever the situation is. I'm going to show you though how you get them. There's a couple videos and sections here of exactly step by step in module 2 how you get copies of your treatment records. Okay, and you need to do that now, or at least start the process. But if for some reason you can't get them or you don't have them, the VA does accept something called lay evidence, all right? And that's that proof that can come from private medical records. So whoever you're seeing now for your routine healthcare, if it's the VA or if it's another private medical group that you see. You can also get statements from families and friends. Those are what we call buddy letters. All right. And so buddy letters can substitute for lay evidence, meaning in the lack of actual hard medical evidence, credible statements from friends or family, a spouse, all right, someone who's known you for 20 years, 30 years, those statements are crucial to help prove the service connection piece because they can shed some light on, hey, I've been married to Jim for 20 years. When we entered the service, he did not have back problems. I know that for a fact. He had no issues with his lower back. However, once he became a C-130 gunship mechanic, he started having to lift heavy things. He was on the flight lines. They didn't have proper protection. He injured his back numerous times. I know because I was there. Okay. So those are things that are crucial in the absence of any medical records. Good news, we've got exact templates here in this course for how to write buddy letters, how you go about asking folks to do that, how you get statements, how you write a personal statement, which is pretty awesome. It's going to help you guys a ton. Okay, but this is that nexus piece. Were there in-service stressors or incidents that caused or made your disability worse? Okay, a little bit more about the nexus. Okay, so you not only do you have to show that the original injury occurred in service, all right, the medical evidence needs to show that the current disability stems from the in-service incident. This is called the continuity of symptomatology. I know that's a big, ugly word, but all that really means is continuity of symptomatology is exactly why I've been shouting at you throughout this lesson to go to the doctor, okay? Because if you don't have evidence showing that you're seeking help it's very likely the VA is going to go, all right, I don't know why this person's filing a claim. The medical evidence doesn't make sense that he or she's having issues because she hasn't gone to the doctor. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you're suffering from PTSD and PTSD-like symptoms, all right? And maybe you have gone in for some treatment, but you haven't gone back now for 4 or 5 years. You're not taking any medicine, and you're not actively seeking treatment. Okay, if you just file a claim for that now, it's very likely you're going to get denied because the VA is not going to see a clear link, a clear nexus between your military service and your PTSD today. And on top of that, you haven't been seeking treatment. So that continuity of symptomatology is weak. And so all of a sudden they're looking at, wait, does this person really have PTSD? If they do, how severe are their symptoms in reality because they're not actively seeking help? Okay, so again, this is where the nexus gets harder to prove. And so I'm asking you guys, go in to the doctor and start getting this stuff documented. All right, you can go on Google right now. If it's a mental health issue you're dealing with, let's say you live in Louisiana, you can Google closest VA facility near me, boom, pops up on the map. Get the line for the mental health and call that number, guys, and start getting help, okay? All right, so the 3 pillars in detail, this is what we talked about, the 3 things that the VA is looking for. And then what I've added here, items in red, are what you need, okay? So the medical diagnosis of the condition or disability by a doctor, we talked about that in detail. What that means is medical records with a diagnosis, all right? You need something on a document that says, hey, I looked at the sleep study for, Jane Smith, and I've determined based on the evidence she has obstructive sleep apnea moderate, okay? Boom, right there in the medical record, you had a sleep study, diagnosed you with sleep apnea. The second one there is that nexus again. If it's not clear, or you've been out of the service for a number of years, or perhaps you've been previously denied, all right? The burden of proof is on you always, and it gets tougher to prove this. So what you need to get is something called a medical nexus opinion from a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a PA, physician's assistant, okay? I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Again, you now have access to our doctors because you're in this course. So if you're having a hard time getting medical nexus opinions done from your current doctors, I know a lot of VA physicians, for whatever reason, they're hesitant to write them regardless of how long they've been treating you. But this is crucial. And you need something in that medical nexus opinion that says, at least as likely as not. Okay, now what that means is 50-50. We're going to get there here in a minute. 50-50 chance that your current disability was caused or made worse by your military service, okay? Then again, the third, the persistent and reoccurring symptoms, that's what I call the severity of symptoms, how a disability is affecting your life. And this goes to medical records, personal statements, and buddy letters. So I'm going to show you in this course exactly how to write your personal statement with real templates, with real examples that we use for the thousands of veterans we've served inside of this course, as well as our elite program, which is where we do it for you. And then the buddy letters, okay? How you have a spouse or someone you served with, what they need to say in their buddy letter in the exact format to document this stuff. That's that lay evidence piece, okay? All right, so I mentioned this concept of a nexus letter, and so I want to talk about it because the nexus letter is crucial if your nexus is weak, all right? If you've been out of the service for 10 years or 20 years and you're trying to get something service connected and you're kind of going, oh, I'm not so sure if this is going to fly. A nexus letter is a document prepared and signed by a medical professional that explains how your current disability was caused or made worse by your military service, okay? That's all it is. It's just a letter. So think about your time in the military, how many memorandum for records you wrote or were a part in. It just lists a statement of facts, talks about the purpose, it talks about who the doctor is, how they know you, and then what their medical opinion is, all right? So here are the 4 crucial elements of a Nexus letter. And by the way, you may be wondering who writes the Nexus letter. You're going to write the Nexus letter. You're going to pre-write it so that the doctor just has to sign it, okay? So rather than going to the doctor who's really busy and maybe hesitant anyway, rather than going to them and saying, hey, I really need you to write a statement for me documenting this, that they're going to be hesitant on that. And it's also going to take them a lot of time. But if you serve this up on a silver platter for them, meaning, boom, you've pre-written what you want it to say, what it should say, and all they have to do is sign it, you're more likely to be successful. But again, though, like we talked about, if you need to use our doctors, you can do that now that you're inside the mastery course, okay? So here are the 4 crucial elements that need to be in this letter, okay? You need to just be brief, discuss the facts, but these are the 4 elements that you must have, all right? Something like, hey, after I reviewed veteran Reese's pertinent medical records and history, I have discovered that his post-traumatic stress disorder, blah, 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 okay? Right? So it's something stating that the medical professional reviewed the medical evidence you provided, they see you, and they're able to document it, okay? That's the first one. And the second one, this is the most crucial piece of the medical nexus letter, because they're giving their professional statement, professional opinion of fact based upon the evidence of the degree of likelihood. The degree of likelihood is one of the 5 statements that's going to either get you service connection or not. So the one that I have templated in there is at least as likely as not. That's a 50-50 statement. That means that in the doctor's medical opinion, there's a 50% chance that your PTSD or your sleep apnea or your GERD or your IBS or your foot problems were caused or made worse by your military service. That's okay. That's the minimum statement you need. 50-50, it's just like baseball. Tie goes to the runner, right, at first base. So if you get that statement in there, you're going to be good. The third part is the author, so the doctor. They need to offer some kind of a rationale on the opinion. And typically what I've seen work best is if you tie it back to medical journals or medical research reports on the issue. Okay, so I've seen folks in our elite group and even in mastery who are able to get PTSD secondary service connected to sleep apnea, or sleep apnea secondary service connected to PTSD. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, how the heck are those related? There's medical journals and medical research out there that talks about how some studies have proven that one of them can cause or make worse the other issue. So what we've had done is the doctors will cite medical journals, medical studies, and what the research found. Okay, so that whoever your doctor is that's signing these, they have to at least give something else to support their statement. All right. Yes, it is sufficient if it's their opinion alone, but it's better if they use more evidence to support that. Okay. And then the fourth one, the author or the doctor must talk about what their credentials are. If they're a VA doctor, list who they are, their title, their specialty. If it's a private doctor, it needs to say who they are. It needs to list their national identifier number. So basically, let's say you had our doctor sign it. They would list their name. It would say physician's assistant. In fact, what our guys do is they put, United States Air Force retired, United States Army retired, and then they list what their actual credential is. If they're an oncologist, an MD, put that. If they're an orthopedic surgeon, MD, put that. It's just their signature block, gang, to add credibility to the statement. All right, so I talked about these statements of likelihood, right? The statement of fact about what the percentage or the likelihood is that your disability was caused or made worse by your military service. You'll see there, statement 3, I have it in bold because that is the minimum bar. That's the minimum threshold that you need to have. At least as likely as not means that it's equal to or a greater than 50% chance that your specific disability was caused or made worse by your service. Number two, I see this a lot too, where the doctor will write more likely than not. That's a great statement as well. That means greater than 50% chance. I've also seen is due to. That means the physician is 100% certain. Hey, after reading the evidence in the medical record, Mr. Reese suffered from traumatic incidents overseas. He was exposed to death, destruction, and injury. They were under constant rocket attacks. So it is my opinion that his PTSD is due to his combat deployment to Afghanistan, right, or his combat deployment to Iraq. It's hard to get that statement. A lot of doctors are hesitant to go out there with 100% certainty of fact, especially if they don't know you too well. So you're more likely to get statement number 2 or statement number 3. Okay, statements 4 and 5, those are no good. So statement 4, not at least as likely as not. That means that in the doctor's opinion, there's less than a 50% chance that your disability was caused or made worse by your military service, okay? And then that last statement, which is a killer, is not due to, 0% chance. If you get either 4 or 5 written down by a doctor, that medical statement is not going to fly, so don't even turn it in. Because if you get that and you turn it in with that, it's not going to get service connected, okay? All right, so I talked to you guys about templates, right? So medical nexus letter templates, there's a bunch of examples inside this course. And literally then what you can do is download a copy, pre-write using those 4 critical elements. You can talk about your situation, your condition, and you can use those medical nexus letters either with your doctors, whether it's at the VA or any private doctors, or you can use them with our doctors, right? We talked about that you guys get a major discount in using our physicians for your medical nexus opinions. Happy to do that for you, but we need you to do a little bit of work too, okay? So take a look throughout this course. There's lots of examples for you to look at, for you to follow, and for you to get this right, okay? All right, that's it for this lesson. All right, so this is module 1, lesson 2, the 3 pillars that you must have. Again, we're talking about your strategy here. If you get this strategy right, the tactics will become easy. All right, so thank you guys again for your service. God bless you and your family, and I'll see you inside here for lesson 3, okay?